Welcome to this special edition of the Footy Show Extra Time. Ped, THT, back again, talking about Everton. I know we don't talk about Liverpool, but there's a reason for that, which will become more apparent in the next few weeks. On the radio show, we've got to be a little bit more diplomatic, but wasn't yesterday brilliant? Yesterday being Sunday, the end of the Premier League season. Because I'm not being funny, but no, let's be honest, I know Reds are going to watch this, but life's just a lot more easier, isn't it? Could you imagine today with the bus, the people in Liverpool, all the rigmarole, getting around, taxi driver would have been a little bit difficult to get around, you've got to look at it that way, haven't you, if you think about it.
Good old-fashioned rivalry.
It is, isn't it? That's all it is, isn't it? That's all it is. I seen that the plane was flown over by the Man United fans. I don't fully agree with that because anything could have happened. That was before the game, but I just know that life's a little bit easier when there isn't trophies involved.
When neither of us win anything.
Outside the way.
No, look, it's rivalry and people sometimes get a little bit too carried away with it, don't they? And you get we've had a lot of pats on the head, I would say, over the last 6 weeks. So I hope you finish in the top four, and obviously because Liverpool
look like Champions League. What more did they want?
Fantastic season, they've done well. But anyway, it's
forget about that.
All I will say is, look, tonight has been a lot easier. We've had to phone John Milburn. He was on the tour bus.
Yeah, forget about it. Right. Last game of the season, obviously, Hull City. We didn't have to worry about anything. Everton got 5th place, basically. Okay, mathematically, okay, Spurs had to win 19-0 and hope that we got beat, but we didn't. We went there in quite a strong team. Roberto Martinez left John Stones, Ross Barkley out, basically because he felt he needed a rest with the announcements of the World Cup, which we'll talk about a bit later on. Distan comes in, Jags comes back in. It's a very familiar looking Everton side. McGeady comes into the team, and okay, we all knew that Hull were playing an FA Cup game 6 days later, the final, of course. But Everton went there and done a very, very professional job and finished the season with 72 points and leaves every Evertonian with a good memory to finish the season.
Yeah, I thought we were excellent. It was a game that you looked at a few weeks ago and thought, there's something on it, potentially Champions League. It looked like a tricky game. Hull obviously got to Wembley, took a little bit of pressure off the game. Obviously, we haven't finished in the Champions League places, but I thought Everton would have been quite easy with nothing on it to go out and maybe Roberto put a couple, like Luke Garber to game and Tyus Browning and field an under-strength Everton side, if you want to call it that, because there's not that many opportunities you get in the Premier League where there's nothing on it. But he didn't. He went out and he put a really strong Everton side out, and I thought he went about the jobs fantastically well. And I would say they won at a canter, to be honest with you.
Both goals really good as well. Really nice to see James McCarthy get his first goal of the season. He picked the last game of the season to do it, but that goal, he deserved it, didn't he, for what he's done this season. And in fact, the way he scored it, I'd like to see a lot more of that, coming from deep, running past the forward line and getting in there, and it was provided by a lovely ball as well by Stephen Naismith, who provided it. Okay, the keeper might have done a little bit better, but it ended up in the back of the net, and it looked a really good goal.
It was a great goal. I just said probably 30 seconds before the goal, James McCarthy really reminds me of Roy Keane, but without the goals. And then 30 seconds later, he puts the ball in the net. It was a great move. It was a lovely little ball into Naismith, and he done one last week, a lovely layoff for Ross Barkley's goal, and he just laid it brilliantly into the path of McCarthy, who'd carried his run on. I like to think he hit it with that much power that McGregor couldn't keep it out, but it was a really good goal. You could see all the players were delighted for him, and it got Everton off to a good start. Probably settled the nerve, if there was any nerves. It settled them down a bit, and they were able to play the passing football from then on.
And they controlled the game from then on, didn't they? Yeah. Probably had more chances, but you got into the second half, and as we said, it was Hull didn't really look too interested. Players trying to not get injured, and other players not playing next week, finishing the last game of the season, not really too bothered. But it goes into the second half, a minute or so in, ball starts with the keeper. I think it's 17 passes later, including one absolutely sublime ball into Lukaku's feet by Leon Osman. Lukaku beats his man for strength, gets to the keeper, nicks to the side of him, and it's a fine finish to wrap up not only a fantastic season for Everton, but a fantastic season for him personally. And when you look at that goal, that just shows everything about Roberto Martinez's new Everton and the school of science, as he likes to call it now. And and can only give Everton fans, players, everyone involved a lift for next season.
Definitely, and the 70-point mark that we all wanted to get past, we'd mentioned it many times this season. Obviously, the win took us past that, and that goal was very much about Everton. This was the new Everton, wasn't it? And we'd seen it the week before. Ross Barkley's goal against Manchester City, starting with the goalkeeper. We were lucky enough to spend some time with Roberto Martinez in the week, and he spoke about that goal being straight from the training ground and exactly how he thought and how he envisaged Everton to play from goalkeeper through the team and to score a goal. And we've seen it again, and that's really, for me, really, really impressive that for 2 games running, we score goals that have started with the goalkeeper. Not a long ball down the field that's direct and you get on the end of it. Bowled out. Some really good, confident play by Everton under pressure in tight pockets to keep the ball, to pass it around. 17 passes. Osman, a lovely little ball into Lukaku, showed some good strength. And what a finishing. He just capped off what has been an excellent loan spell, really. We've been critical of him at times for kind of wandering through games, but when he's on it, he really is an excellent prospect, and 16 goals speaks for itself, really, doesn't it?
And we move on to the loan deals. Obviously, his loan deal has now come to an end. Gareth Barry's now a free agent, and Gerard Deulofeu is also returning to his own club, Barcelona, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. You mentioned the interview we did with Roberto Martinez there, and he very much wants to keep Lukaku. He very much is willing to pay the money for Romelu Lukaku as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether that deal can be done, or whether the World Cup getting in the way could maybe cause a few issues for Everton. If he has a really good World Cup, you can imagine a few other suitors in Europe willing to pay stupid money that Chelsea will probably want for him.
Definitely, but that's the risk that every player's got, isn't it? Going into a World Cup year, it's very, very difficult to tie players down beforehand. I think Chelsea will be reluctant to do anything before the World Cup for all of the reasons you've just mentioned, Ped. I think if they're willing to sell him, it will be after the World Cup. Do we want him to struggle in the World Cup? Personally, probably, yeah. Let everyone else score the goals.
Well, he's from Belgium. It's not like he's playing for England.
No. I hope he gets one World Cup goal and doesn't show up very well, and Chelsea sell him for 10 million. I'll be delighted. But no, obviously it'd be lovely to get him signed up this week, wouldn't it? It'd be fantastic for the deal to be struck before the World Cup, but that's just the chance you're taking, and we have to, who knows, he might have an absolute nightmare of a World Cup, and teams might look at him and think, would that make a real difference though? Because he has scored, over 30 goals in the Premier League in the last 2 seasons, and surely that should be what you look at for a player like he is. The way I look at it with the Lukaku thing is, Everton at 5th just missed out on Champions League this season. 7 points short of Champions League. Not an awful lot, not an awful lot wrong there. So who's going to come in realistically for him in the Premier League who Everton wouldn't be able to compete with? Okay, so I'd rule out Liverpool, United, Manchester City. He's already at Chelsea. They don't want him. Arsenal, potentially. I don't think Chelsea would sell to Arsenal.
Chelsea wouldn't sell anyway.
It puts Everton into a little pocket, probably with Tottenham. Maybe Newcastle, but I'm not just, he wouldn't entertain Newcastle with pards. So really, for me, if it's to stay in the Premier League, it'd be a straight fight between Everton and Spurs. Now, okay, Spurs love paying silly money to everybody, but Everton and Tottenham, if you're Lukaku, if Everton can match a price that Chelsea are comfortable with, then I think Everton get him.
Yeah.
The problem is if he does okay in the in the World Cup, the likes of Juve, who may be looking at him, or one of those clubs. And then if that's the case, there's no shame if he chooses a Champions League club over Everton. But look, I think people at the club feel as though we're in with more than a fighting chance of getting him. And I look at that and think that gives me some confidence. At the right price, Roberto Martinez was really, really determined and at pains the other day to almost say to us, he's who I want to hang my hat on for next season. It's a statement of intent. And so if he becomes available at a price Everton can afford, then brilliant.
Obviously as well, Gareth Barry, brilliant this season, absolutely instrumental in the way Everton have been playing. He's now a free agent. He can basically do what he wants. He's going to get a lot of offers. I'm sure he'll get offers from Premier League teams. The big rumour is the MLS, this new team in New York. But you look at that and you think, yeah, it's got connections with Manchester City. Obviously his parent club. They're probably willing to offer him big money as well. But they're not going to start till March 2015. So you're going to have that big gap, there. Wouldn't know what would happen there. And also, from a new team point of view, they're not really going to get going for another year or so. So would you be better thinking, right, I'll sign a contract with Everton or whoever for 2 years and then maybe go to the MLS? Because, you look at his football this year, he can still do it at the top level without a problem. And you just worry as well, if he goes to America, yes, he might be a standout, but if he plays for a team that haven't got similar players around him, he might get frustrated at that. And that might be, he might think, well, I've just wasted 2 years of my career. You only get one at a team that is struggling.
Yeah, I think I'm not convinced he'll sign for 2 years. I'm not going to lie. We know with MLS clubs that it takes a little bit of time to get them going. As you pointed out, that Ped, we have an interest in the MLS, don't we? And how it got, how teams grow from there. It may be better for him to let them get up and running. I certainly would like to see him stay, at least even if it's for 12 months, because that'll give him another year at the top level, if you want to call it, in the Premier League. It gives New York City the chance to get their season underway. He can then have the pre-season. He can then end the season and join, similar to the way Tim Cahill joined New York Red Bulls in around August, July, August. When they're into their season, he can get himself ready and then join in and almost link up for those last couple of months of the season, because they finish in November, don't they? Depending on how far they've gone in MLS.
Get used to the calendar more than anything else.
The calendar. What's required?
Been playing the Premier League, for 20 years or whatever it's been. You're used to, obviously, August to May. You'll be going to a country where it's late March to November if you get into the playoffs. So maybe you might be right there. If he goes into the MLS on the back of a Premier League season, he's got that fitness, played the last 3 or 4 months, where in reality the MLS, that's when it really starts getting going anyway. The first couple of months are sort of non-issue anyway because of that playoff system. You can have a real good late run, get yourself in the playoffs, and so that might be the ideal situation. Another year at Everton and then go into New York with that season.
I think definitely, and it gives him a chance to acclimatise, like you say, to the conditions, who he's playing with. Gives him a couple of months to get into it, and then he can have that off-season period. Maybe come back to Everton for a month, have an off-season period, and then get ready to go all guns blazing for their second season in MLS, having done a combination of Everton and New York City.
I think that would make sense to me. Obviously, Deulofeu as well. Really, I mean, if you look at it from the outside, it would make sense that he came back to Everton for his own development. There's been talk today that if a new manager comes in who's going to be appointed from within, Luis Enrique, he would want him. But it's all talk, isn't it? It is all talk, and you would still think for the best of the player and for the best for the two teams, he might as well come back to Everton for another year.
I think you're right. I think he will, if he is recalled to Barcelona and was there for next season. I see him as a substitute appearance every now and again. I think
at best, because when you look at how poorly Neymar's done this season, he's gonna need that next season to bed in again, and you just think this kid is just. Neymar's done poorly and yet has played most games because of the politics of his transfer. And you think,
big signing,
if Deulofeu, and also all the controversy that's surrounded it since the president's having to resign because of it. And you just think if Deulofeu goes there, he's not really going to get much of a sniff again.
I think if you look at it, I think the thing with Deulofeu is he's behind Telio and Afellay and Sanchez and Pedro and them kinds of players. That someone called Messi who's okay. Neymar himself, so there's a lot of other issues that a lot of bodies he's got to move out the way to get in. I think what will happen is he'll go away now and have his summer. He loves a selfie. He'll be in Ibiza giving it all that on the selfie with flip-flops on, and then he'll go back to pre-season as a Barcelona player. He'll probably do the early part of pre-season there. They'll do the medical checks on him, some testing on him, and I think probably around the end of July, that agreement, the gentleman's agreement that Everton have in place, will see him. I expect him to come back to Everton around the beginning of August.
Of course, there's another player on loan at Everton. Lucina Traore, who, the forgotten man, came off the bench yesterday and ruined his fine stats of 1 goal, 1 performance, 1 goal.
Still got 1 start, 1 goal.
Yeah, 1 start, 1 goal. He came on yesterday. Again, Roberto Martinez hinted to us last week that he could be ready for it. And this was a player that, you know, Roberto Martinez, when he spoke to us last week, was, you know, his eyes lit up when he spoke about him. He was really enthused about him and said not only that he wanted to keep him at the club and felt he'd done enough, but that Traore had took the club into his heart and had sat and watched games and really, really, you know, was astounded by the relationship between the crowd and the players and wanted to be involved in that. And, you know, that's really interesting because, you know, ever since getting injured in that Chelsea warm-up, we've not really heard sight or sound of him till this weekend. And, you know, it looks like Roberto Martinez is going to do everything he can to bring him back.
I think it was really good by the club to not even mention him. You know, I remember there was a press conference about 2 or 3 weeks ago and Roberto said, no, I don't think you're going to see him now, he's injured. We'll look in the summer and maybe we can do something. So it was a bit of a surprise to us the other day when he said that he'd be in the squad and he'd come off the bench. Okay, it was, I think, just to get him on the pitch for a few minutes to say to the fans, I am here. I think if Everton can keep him, I think he'd be an asset. If he can get him fit, I think so far his loan deal's been a waste of time, hasn't it? So therefore, Monaco...
But has it been a waste of time? Because another thing that came out of that interview, and I'm sorry we're referring back to the interview a lot, you can find it at soundcloud.com/Velotonians. One of the things that came out of it...
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Was that he talked about when he scouted players, about how he wanted to get to know them and find out every little bit about them, and he will have found out a lot about the player's attitude in this space of time. Okay, he hasn't played that much, but if he's already, you know, if he already knows about the player or what the player can bring, then surely now he knows a little bit about the man, and knowing that might have sealed the deal.
Yeah, well, look, if he didn't fancy him or he thought this isn't going to happen or he won't fit into our club, I think he would have just let him drift back off quite, you know. When he got the injury at Chelsea, it would have been quite easy for Everton to say, not going to be ready now for the remainder of the season. May as well go back to his parent club. You know, thanks very much, and we'll do our dealings elsewhere. They kept them around. Okay, went off to Dubai to do some warm weather rehabilitation and has come back in to the fold. And like you said, Martinez was at pains to say that he wanted to keep him, and they'd be sitting down with Monaco and trying to get a 12-month loan deal out of it. And if he comes in and gets a pre-season under his belt and is fit, you know, we don't know what he brings to the side and whether he can do it because we've only seen 65 minutes of him. But if he's good enough for Martinez, then he's got to be good enough for us.
Moving on to the World Cup, obviously the announcement was today of the World Cup squad for England. 3 Everton players in there. Obviously, Phil Jagielka we knew about, Leighton Baines we knew about, and obviously we basically know now that he is the first choice left back. Ross Barkley, there's been a few oohs and ahs about it in the last few weeks. A lot of people saying in the media that he wouldn't go because, you know, Roy Hodgson was a little bit scared of youth, but I think he's proved in this squad that he's not. And also John Stones is on standby, and is basically, you know, Roy Hodgson has also pointed out that if Phil Jones is not back by the 2nd of June, which I probably think he will be, but then John Stones will be the replacement. So I mean, how amazing would it be going to a World Cup, you know, in Brazil with 4 Everton players in the squad, and you know, when you think back to our youth, Mexico '86, when England had, you know, I think it was 5 players in the squad, 5 Everton players in the squad.
Well, Stevens, Lineker.
5. See,
just name them for you.
Right.
Name them.
It's brilliant for the club, isn't it? It shows what level it's got, and then when you're talking about people saying England are going to adapt a system that is very much like Everton's system. Obviously, Southampton and Liverpool are in there as well because they play similar styles. It really does endorse the club for me and endorses what Everton have been doing for not just this season, but the last few seasons of trying to have, you know, a good core of English players in there.
Definitely, you know, for them to get in. Obviously, Barkley has been fabulous this season, and he's almost like a Paul Gascoigne type midfielder who can carry the ball at pace. And England haven't got many of them, so I think and he's the physicality of Ross Barkley, how big he is and strong and such a good technician, you know, and that's fantastic for England. But I think the likes of John Stones, even if he just went to be a Theo Walcott 2006 player. Great experience. Be away, learn tournament football. You know, potentially get a little bite of it. I'm a bit like you. I think Phil Jones will recover. I think it's a few weeks yet. It's 3 weeks away. I think the shoulder injury. I don't think he would have been named in this initial squad if they thought that he wouldn't be fit. So I think John Stones may end up on a beach somewhere rather than being it. But even to be considered is fantastic. He's only had, I think you said, 12 games this season. So it's an incredible achievement.
Do you think that he should take John Stones to the World Cup even if he's not in the squad? Because I think John Stones is the future of England. I think he's a future England captain. I've been saying it all season. Do you think it would be worthwhile saying, right, I'm going to take him, I'm going to take John Flanagan, you two are the future, you're going to be knocking on the door, you are knocking on the door, and this is what a World Cup's like. This is what it's like to be around the World Cup. This is what it's like to cope with media demands and travelling demands and just everything that goes with the World Cup.
Yeah, and they could obviously train with the players. They could do the full training if they were in at 23. I think it's got its merits, hasn't it? Would they be considered, if they don't go, are they going to be considered for the under-20s World Tournament in Toulouse?
Well, there's an under-21 Toulon tournament, yeah.
So are they considered for that? They're both eligible for it.
But is that really going to better their development?
No, but it's a tournament, isn't it? And I think if you look at them, the pair of them, any experience you can get at that level is helpful, isn't it? So whether or not I know exactly what you're saying. It's actually a great idea. Go along. Do they want to do that after a long season? I'm not so sure. But it'd be nice to give them the option if they don't make it and say, come with us, get on the plane, get your boots on training. This is how we prepare. This is what's expected of us. If they're going to be in future England squads, what a better ground than to go and be part of a World Cup. You know, comes around every 4 years. By the time the next World Cup comes around, you'd like to think those two would be cemented in that squad, playing at the highest level, developing, and it would start here. There's probably not enough of this type of experience, and this is why England suffer, in my opinion. I've been an advocate of playing the qualifying games over a 2-week period, so that you have the players, like in September, you'd play 3 qualifying games and have that England squad together for a fortnight, so you live in a hotel, you play games, because that gives you that ground, and going away, being away with your national team, going and training, eating together, you know, having your recreation time together, then getting off for games, rather than you meet up for a week and you play 2 games and you go back to your club. Have two blocks of 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. So, and you don't get enough chance to have that experience, which is when a tournament comes around. It's such a thing you're not used to, that it's a big deal, when really what you want is, you want players to go in and think, I've been and done this before, and I'm comfortable with this environment.
Well, obviously, we know what Phil Jagielka and Leighton Baines bring to England, but what's Ross Barkley going to bring to England?
The ability to struggle in interviews. I think he's not the best at that. No, I think it's a tough one with Ross, because I'm not so sure he's going to start games. Yeah. But at the moment, when he's come on in games, he's not always been able to find his rhythm.
Do you think, though, that being part of an England team in a World Cup, that's going to take over, and it's all going to be about enthusiasm? And maybe, you know, we've seen this before, where a player doesn't necessarily start a World Cup, a young player gets on, gets a cameo, plays 20 minutes, and next minute it's like the media and the fans are like saying, he's got to play, he's just tore them apart, we need that player. You know, you think back of Owen, you know, in 98, you know, okay, I think he was a little bit more developed and done a little bit more than Ross Barkley from the outside, but you know, you could imagine a situation where Ross gets on for the last half an hour of a game, the first game, and then people are clamouring for that second game.
Definitely. I think the thing with Ross is that, like I said before, there's not too many players like him. So when you've got him in that midfield, coming up against other international players who've never experienced this lad who, I don't want to use Zidane, but Zidane was quite a tall, imposing midfield player with fantastic ability of running with the ball, and England haven't got. They've got little fast players, but this is a lad who can shrug people off and hold people off a bit, like Paul Gascoigne, and we haven't got it. So I could definitely see him coming on and affecting games.
And I think, you know, what we've seen this season is at times a lack of consistency. But you think the fact that what he hasn't got in consistency, he'll make up for in shock value against teams where teams won't know him. They'll just see this kid coming on, and when he gets the ball, they'll probably be used to England players who do the safe thing, and he's not going to do the safe thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're torn as an Evertonian, aren't you? Because you'll want him to get on and tear it up, but then we all know what these England get-togethers do. You start worrying, don't you? And the media love to sell our players, as we're well aware. Yeah. But I think just taking it on from a purely football point of view, he can definitely bring an X factor, if you like, if that's what you want to term it as, to change a game for England, or certainly to shock people and make people think, who's this kid who's just come on and taking us the cleaners here, and because he runs with the ball at that level, he'll drag people here, there and everywhere. And I suppose it'd be nice to see the likes of him and Rooney link up and see what Sturridge can offer off Rooney and maybe Sterling wide. So from an England perspective, it's quite exciting to have those kind of players.
Right, if you want to get involved in the conversation, get in touch with us on Twitter at the Footy Show KCC. Also on the comments on this YouTube video. We'll be back soon from the Footy Show Extra. Good night.
Good night.